Hello friends, Eli Hibbett here with the Pwn Your Homework Physics Series podcast. If you're looking to prepare, review, or gain an added edge or point of view about topics in physics, then look no further. Tune in each week to unlock your understanding of the physical world surrounding us. And now let's dive right in. Alright, hello my friends, how is everybody feeling today? I am feeling pretty good, your host Eli Hibbett. I have just had a cup of coffee, which for me puts me into absolute overdrive. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a good one. This is episode 1, our first real podcast with some meat in it. And before we dive into what is physics, I just wanted to go through a couple of practical items. One thing, I have a website, 2718productions.com. That's 2718productions.com. There's a lot of resources there, specifically for this podcast, physics-related apps and all the apps that I have available. Right now, it's the month of August, and if there are any earlier birds out there that are checking out this podcast and want to download some of my apps, all of my physics apps are free from now until the end of August. So if you're just getting started, I want to, help you out on your journey and give you a little bit of a reward for that. So check out the apps and let me know what you think. If you have any comments or questions or concerns about the podcast or the apps, drop me a line at info@2718productions.com. One other noteworthy website is pwnyourhw @blogspot.com. That's going to be the website with all of the notes and resources relating to this podcast, which you'll be able to click over from the main 2718 Productions website. Okay, so enough of that. Let's get into the real beef of this podcast. What is physics? For newer students, this is something that nobody ever really dives into, and nobody really addresses what is physics. You just kind of start doing math problems and start learning about situations of throwing balls and forces and equilibrium and all this stuff, but nobody really says, what is physics? So I thought it would be a good idea to start there and give us a place from which to work. I consulted one of the most reliable resources in the world, Wikipedia. This is what Wikipedia has to say about physics. Physics is a branch of science concerned with the nature and properties of matter and energy. The subject matter of physics, distinguished from that of chemistry and biology, includes mechanics, heat, light, and other radiation, sound, electricity, magnetism, and the structure of atoms. What a wild definition. Essentially just giving us topics that people think are under the purview of physics. And I don't think that there is that much of a distinction between chemistry and physics, really. Chemistry kind of just gives you a lot more visual representation. It doesn't really dive into the mechanics of how things work. But I thought I'd give you a little bit of a definition from Eli's noggin as to what physics is. A lot of professors will tell you that physics is everywhere. Physics is all around us. And I don't necessarily agree with that. What I think is that the world is all around us, and that the world behaves in a very predictable, reproducible fashion. And we have this phenomenal language called mathematics, which we can apply and say with a high degree of certainty how things are going to evolve given some initial parameters. If you know certain things about a system, you can say with a very high degree of certainty how the system will evolve. Let's say you have a conveyor belt which moves milk bottles down a line. We assume that every bottle is going to be filled exactly the same because every time we move the conveyor down one, we have essentially the exact same set of conditions. And in our universe, we make no assumption about what's going to happen in the future. We're not sure what's going to happen the next time, but we have a pretty good idea. If you take a ball and throw it in the air, we can say based on the last million times that you threw a ball in the air that it is going to come back down. And based on that, based on our experimental evidence of saying, every time I throw a ball up in the air, it falls back down, we can say that there are certain properties governing this. And if you know certain things about the beginning of that problem, if you know the angle that you threw the ball in the air, if you know how fast you began to throw the ball in the air, if you know the value of gravity in your area, you can say exactly how high the ball is going to go, how long the ball will stay in the air. There are quite a few things that you can determine with a very little bit of information. This is the power of physics, is the ability to predict with a high degree of certainty what is going to happen next. But I think the really funny thing is that if you're a scientist, you go into every situation saying, I have no idea what is going to happen. But based on all the information that I know previous to this, I have a pretty good idea. So, a couple of things. I think that you are going to find as we go down this road that I am a really big Richard Feynman fan. He was a physicist who worked on the Manhattan Project. He came up with what you may have heard as Feynman diagrams in the past, which describe how radiation comes off of atoms. And he also won a Nobel Prize. He has a very excellent book called Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. It has absolutely nothing to do with physics, really. It's just about his adventures about being a child and just being in love with the world that we live in. And I highly recommend you read it. It's called Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. I just want to throw that out there again. I'm not receiving any money for this. I'm just a Feynman fanboy. And recommend for your well-being as a human being and potentially a physicist that you check that out. So, let me give you a couple of quotes here to give you a taste of who Richard Feynman is if you haven't heard of him. And these are all pertaining to what is physics. Science is the belief in the ignorance of experts. Science alone, of all the subjects, contains within itself the lesson of the danger of belief in the infallibility of the greatest teachers of the preceding generation. This is a very powerful thing. And I think it happens, physicists like to really beat up chemistry and biology pretty hard, but in physics, there is a high degree of skepticism, and that's what really keeps it as pure as it is. There's no fear in tearing down generations and generations of information and work if it's not right. If it's either the proof is in the pudding. It either works or it doesn't, and if it doesn't work and we have a better idea, down comes the whole damn thing. This quote that I have, I think, really pertains to the definition of what is physics. Do not read so much. Look about you and think of what you see there. This really boils down to it, because what you're doing in physics is not trying to solve an equation. What you're trying to do is discover something about the world around you and exactly how it works. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. There's a lot of things written. A lot of people say, okay, here's some equations. Here's how you calculate X, Y, and Z. And to really keep yourself grounded, just look around, see what's happening, and see if you can describe it. See what you know, and see how you can describe the motion. See how you can figure out what's going on around you. That's really the important thing to keep in mind while you're going through your first physics course, your 10th physics course, while you're ripping your hair out in grad school. This is really the crux of it, guys. All right, I got a couple more quotes pertaining to the notion of what is physics. Each piece or part of the whole of nature is always merely an approximation to the complete truth, or the complete truth so far as we know it. In fact, everything we know is only some kind of approximation, because we know that we do not know all the laws yet. Therefore, things must be learned only to be unlearned again, or, more likely, to be corrected. The test of all knowledge is experiment. Experiment is the sole judge of scientific truth. This is so important. You learn something, and you look around you, and you see that it's not correct. Out it goes, as I said before. An experiment, when you go through and you test it, really validate to yourself that what you're doing is correct. You can see that this is working or is not working, and if it's not working, you have to find out why. Are you hooked yet? I don't know. This though, the way that he is able to use language to describe what he thinks about physics really just makes me smile. Oh, he is the best. This next quote has to do with one piece of information that you think you could pass on. If, in some cataclysm, all of scientific knowledge were to be destroyed, and only one sentence passed on to the next generation of creatures, what statement would contain the most information in the fewest words? I believe it is the atomic hypothesis, or the atomic fact, or whatever you wish to call it, that all things are made of atoms, little particles that move around in perpetual motion, attracting each other when they are a little distance apart, but repelling upon being squeezed into one another. In that one sentence, you will see that there is an enormous amount of information about the world if just a little imagination and thinking are applied. The one thing that I wanted to say about this, maybe it makes me sound silly, but as a child, the first time I learned that my body was made up of cells, or that those cells were made up of atoms, I had this, like, my head exploded. I was like maybe 3 or 4 years old, and the thought that I was not a continuous piece of flesh, I guess you'd say, that you could break me up into little parts. I had this dichotomy of, it sort of scared me, because the notion that you could break me up into little pieces didn't really make me feel comfortable. But even at such a young age, I had this feeling that, like, I'm not sure what else I was expecting. And at the same time, I got this feeling that it really made sense. I mean, I had Lego blocks and understood that those things get put together, and, why not me as well? And so it sort of took the whole thing and made me feel a lot more comfortable with the world I was living in. After you get over that initial fear, it's a lot more comforting than thinking the other way. All right, the last quote. This is a short one. If an apple is magnified to the size of the Earth, then the atoms in the apple are approximately the size of the original apple. Just thinking about the world I live in, thinking about Google Earth, thinking about zooming out and zooming in to the size of an apple, and thinking about holding an apple in my hand, and that essentially being an atom on this big blue ball, really gives you a sense of perspective, especially when you're eating or holding an apple. So that's Richard Feynman, for better or for worse. I hope I'm doing him some sense of justice, and that you check out anything that you can find out about this guy, because the more I learn about him, the more I like him. I wish I would have had a chance to meet him. I'd like to end with something I'm hoping to do every week, and I want to recommend a resource that's not necessarily academic. Maybe it will be academic every once in a while, but I want it to be, because for me, I think being a scientist, being a physicist, should be fun, and it's not always about solving equations and doing math and being, antisocial or awkward and having these things that only a select few know. You should be able to have items about what you do that you could talk to anybody about. And so for this first one, I'd like to recommend the Symphony of Science. Another person I'm a major fanboy of is Carl Sagan, almost more so than Richard Feynman. And the first song that Symphony of Science made was called A Glorious Dawn, and what they do is they auto-tune quotes from famous scientists and put them into songs. And to me, the product was just unreal. I could listen to it all day and all night. And so I will link that up in the show notes. And if anybody likes it, write a comment on pwnyourhw.blogspot.com. Let me know if you like it. Let me know if you don't like it. And hopefully this segment will recur, and I will give you more things to check out. If you have any recommendations, anything that gets you going, gets you excited about science, leave a comment, drop me a line, and show me some love. And with that, I am going to sign off. With the same thing I gave you last time, I'd like to say stay frosty, stay creative, and I wish you way more than luck.